Nice, calm. Perfect.
It's finally October, man. The month of scares. And I want to talk about something scary and something real. So this topic I'm going to bring to you guys is going to be a serious topic. So a few jokes will be made. The Son of Sam, or his real name, Dave Berkowitz, was terrorizing New York during the mid-70s and early 80s, truly topping all the other disgusting things that New Yorkers are going through. New York City was in a terrible state during the mid-70s. Everywhere you go, there would be violence. Every day, there would be a robbery somewhere. There would be a prostitute literally in every corner. Sexual assault would be a thing. Murder would be rampant, assuming those murders actually had a reason behind it. What made Son of Sam so terrifying was the fact that he had no motives to kill. He would just go out at night and then pick some random lovebirds in Lover Lane. Well, that's what he wanted you all to think. So before we go into this, I gotta let you know there's gonna be some trigger warnings. Like SA, ammo abuse, CP, child abuse, self-harm, cult activities. So if your head's not in the right space, you can go watch something else. You can probably watch one of my videos or some other YouTube channel, it's fine. And if you're gonna stay here, don't forget to like and sub and ring that bell for more and better stuff to be put on the channel. Gotta do a plug somewhere, you know. Without further ado, let's start it. Well, copyright strike just hit me for the first time, and yeah, this shit's cooked. So I'm gonna have to fix everything. Well, it's not gonna be fixed. It's gonna be very, very scattered and janky. So I do apologize if the content don't look right. Everything is like cuts. I'm doing that on purpose so I don't get cucked by fucking content or YouTube. But yeah, my explanations might be the only thing that might really tell you what I'm talking about, because I kind of use some of the clips to explain it better than what I could, but nah, whatever, you know, it's YouTube, so whatever.
New York City has been hit by a tremendous increase in the cost of borrowing, in the unemployment, in the drop in revenue.
Crummiest, most rat and crime-infested place in the country, and of those of us who live here.
Last year assaulted, robbed, or murdered.
During the late 1970s, New York City was plagued by severe economic and political troubles, unlike any of the city's inhabitants had ever experienced before. It was seen as like the dirtiest, noisiest, crummiest, most rat and crime-infested place in the country. I can say honestly, it takes second place to what New York City is now. But I digress. Due to the recession, there is an increase in unemployment, leaving many people with families homeless with little to no revenue, leaving families struggling to keep food on their table and roofs over their heads. Due to this, everyone had to go through other means of making money.
Some people once called New York Fun City. Now the police and firemen's unions in New York are calling it Fear City. Mayor Abraham Beame is planning to lay off about 10,000 policemen, firemen, and other safety officers as a way of helping the city out of its financial problems.
Let's go!
Crime was rampant. Drug addicts filled the alleys, started squatting on private property to produce more drugs for fiends. People selling their bodies for money or dope, sitting on corners waiting for their next hit. New York City was deteriorating from the inside out. Not even the cops were safe. About 10,000 cops, firemen, and other safety officers were laid off to help the city out of its financial problems. Funny enough, to make a shitty situation even worse, somebody had a great idea to start shooting.
July 29th, 1976. Instantly.
My wife comes screaming in the hall. And that was it. There was nobody around. My daughter was 18 years old.
I think we might have lit up a joint. Next thing you know, it felt like the car exploded.
Days after Thanksgiving, it was almost 1 a.m. Nana DeMasi in the neck, Joanne Lamino in the back. Both survived. Joanne Lamino is paralyzed.
People are caught, they usually resemble the person.
Is there ever something which is completely different?
Not often, not often.
Christine Froon, 26 years old, is dead in a shooting that has no
head. I grabbed her and I started screaming, Chris, 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 you know?
The police say this is a senseless killing.
It was pitch dark and I saw a number of people standing around, and then a note really broke it down.
Dunya Voskarichian fell to the pavement with blood spurting from a face wound.
The weapon that was being used was a Charter Arms .44.
These aimless attacks were horrible, some of the craziest things these people had to witness in their own hometown. Donna Loria and Jody Valenti were the first victims of these shootings. They seemed to be chilling in Jody's car when someone walked up to the vehicle and fired 3 shots into it. One of them hit Donna, unfortunately killing her, while Jody thankfully survived. A terrible showing of how bad New York has been, demonstrating how a random killing can occur in someone's neighborhood. Thinking that maybe someone had it out for them, no one would expect that it would happen again. Until it did. 3 months later, Carl Denaro and Rosemary Keaton just finished drinking at the bar and decided to hook up for the night. I'm assuming they wanted to do it in a car because they sparked up a joint while chilling in it, making them prime targets for a shooting. Around 2 a.m., Denaro, in his own words, said it felt like the car exploded, glass everywhere. Surprisingly, they both survived, especially Mr. Denaro, who got shot in his head with a .44 round. Things started to get concerning. Another shooting for no reason, but this time no casualties. Maybe this one was a botched assassination. Police thought this had zero correlation with the first shooting because they occurred in 2 separate New York boroughs. But that sadly is not the case, because 1 month later another shooting happened. After Thanksgiving, Donna Damasi and Joanne Lamino were sitting in Lamino's porch in Belarus, Queens. As they talked, a man approached them. He asked for directions in this high-pitched voice. I guess something must have happened during that where he must have pulled out a revolver and started shooting. He hit Damasi in the neck and Lamino in the back, paralyzing her, but fortunately they both survived. The police asked for a description of the guy, which they gave to them, and for some reason the cops still haven't connected either of the shootings to anyone. But it doesn't matter because 2 months later, tragedy struck again. Christine Freund and John Deal were sitting in Deal's car in Queens when their vehicle was shot at. Deal suffered minor injuries, while Freund died from her injuries at the hospital. No one had a good look at the shooter, but people started to see a pattern here. Young lady with long brown black hair were always the target of shooting, which finally got the police to use their brains and connect the shootings. Maybe not, but with these sketches from witnesses' testimony, the cops figured out that there are likely multiple shooters. But all that doesn't matter because less than a month, yet another shooting occurred. Virginia Voskrichkin was shot point blank in the head while walking home from college. She lives just 1 block away from Christine Freund, a previous victim. With all these shootings going on, detectives started to lock in and managed to link it to one killer and deemed him the .44 killer.
We have determined that there has been a .44 caliber revolver used in every one of them, which is why, as the mayor mentioned, it's important that any person having information with respect to anyone who's in possession of a .44 caliber revolver call us.
The killer has struck 5 times since last summer.
His victims, mostly young women with shoulder-length dark hair.
We used to stay in front of my house and talk and yell and kiss goodnight, but we can't do that no more.
I thought of maybe dyeing it a little redder or something, really. To be honest, because just having short brown hair.
Everyone was now scared of this killer, now it has been confirmed to be connected. Ladies all over were especially scared out of their mind. No one felt safe at bars or in their cars. Hell, even just being outside made them feel like they were going to be the next victims. That was true fear. And that fear was just starting to grow.
Fear has spread in this city. Streets in residential areas are deserted late at night.
Lovers' lanes were emptied. Spots where young people congregated.
Do you have many customers who come in, women who want to get their hair shortened?
Yes, I do. They get their hair cut short, even though it's not so becoming on them.
4 weeks after the police confirmed there was a killer on the loose, he struck again, right back to where it all started. Alexander Esau and Valentina Serrani were in the Bronx, several blocks away from where he first shot Zorana and Ventelli. The pair were each shot twice while sitting in the car, and both died in the scene. Due to the public now knowing the killer himself knew of what they named him and decided to leave something for him at the crime scene. Police discovered a handwritten letter addressed to Captain of the Police Force, Mr. Joe Borelli.
Mr. Joe Borelli, Queens Homicide. I'm deeply hurt by you calling me a women hater. It was a murder, Mr. Monster.
Some people came up with a reason for leaving a demonic letter like that. For the captain, it's to taunt him, to tell him his reasoning for what he did and how he's gonna fucking do it again. He seemed to give himself the name Son of Sam. Jimmy Brislin was the face of Daily News at the time, and he wanted to tell the killer to knock it off and turn himself in.
Jimmy Breslin, then of the New York Daily News, wrote a...
Turn it over to the police immediately because there's an addition that we can put this in.
Within these letters were nicknames: Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, and John Wheaties. Now, keep that last name in mind because we're gonna be coming back to that later. The killer knew that talking to Breslin was his way of gaining more publicity. With the headlines reading Son of Sam, the name stick, and everyone was hooked on this ongoing investigation. 2 months has passed since the 6 shootings with all the media now talking about the Son of Sam. This one had everyone go into complete hiding. On June 26, 1977, the Son of Sam made another appearance in Bayside, Queens. Sal Lupo and Judy Placido were sitting in their cars in the early morning hours when they were shot at 3 times. They both suffered minor injuries and survived. Unfortunately, they didn't have any visuals of the shooter. Some witnesses claimed they saw a tall, stocky man with dark hair fleeing from the scene. 1 week before the anniversary, the shooter wrote another letter telling the police that they shouldn't forget about Donna Laura, how she was a good girl and her blood tasted sweet. July 29th, he'll return to do it again at the same spot.
The killer chose Breslin as his conduit to a larger public.
This was the first case where the press took a hand in not reporting the news necessarily, but creating the news.
What I thought was one of the most disgusting episodes I've seen in journalism, which is pandering to this series of murders. Sir,
you have problems with publishing that letter? Then obviously you're not in the news business.
Sure enough, he does strike again, but waits 2 days after the anniversary, because he knew that every badge with a gun was out there on the streets looking for him that day. This was the biggest manhunt in history of manhunts. Like, over 300 policemen were out there looking for him. They made sting operations everywhere, cops in wigs, in everyday attire, just chilling in cars, waiting to catch the killer. Tons of cops were out there at night. Tons of people who were out there at night were approached for inspection, which they complied to because they also, after the killer was out, hundreds of car chases just for it to become someone who was trying to go home in a hurry, avoid the cops and killer. The cops stayed up all night to find him and he never showed. He never appeared, which means no one got hurt, and to the cops, that's a win for them. Oh, it was such a short victory.
The man started screaming, "Help me!"
Section of New York. A year and 2 days after the first shooting, Son of Sam hit for the first time in Brooklyn. The details cruelly familiar.
Stacy Maskowitz was the 6th and last victim of the shooter's killing spree. With her passing, it seemed like everyone was no longer scared, but pissed off. People wanted to find the killer themselves and do a public execution, which I 100% back. The police in this scenario were not helping in the slightest, and the outcome of this story would be different if it wasn't for James' justice. James was assigned to check if he could find out anything on the summons issued that night of the shooting. He went to the precinct, looked through the summons receipt book, and found a summons. With this, he discovered the name David Berkowitz from Yonkers.
Goblin. Fuck everything, man.
James must have felt that luck was on his side because he called Yonkers PD to see if they know this guy. The dispatch that night was a girl named Wheat Carr. She told him, "I'll tell you about him. He lives right behind me. He's a weirdo and he shot our black Labrador." The owner of the dog was her father's, Sam Carr. Father Sam, Son of Sam. Things started to connect with James very quickly. He headed back to his inspector and he asked, "How'd it go?" James responded with, "I think we got him. I think we really got him." And sure enough, they did.
About 8:45, a subject came out of the building. Now, I looked out and I said to the 2 officers, "I think this might be him. He's coming towards a car." He did stop. He opened the door. I said, "This is him." I jumped out of the car.
No, I'm the Son of Sam. And you got me.
This is the man police believe to be the Son of Sam. He is David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker who lived alone. He was smiling as he was brought in.
Now, who is the Son of Sam? Well, let me show you what the media sees him as.
The most famous of all mass murderers, the most infamous, was Jack the Ripper. His name is synonymous with terror, with sudden violent death. Yet Jack the Ripper assaulted a total of 5 women, all prostitutes in the Whitechapel section of London, in a 3-month period in 1888. The man who calls himself Son of Sam has already outlasted Jack the Ripper and outdone him.
The public outcry when they finally caught him, it was comparable to I Show Speed or I can't remember what I'm saying. I Show Speed or Kaiser Nat doing an IRL stream, people figuring out their location. Every reporter wanted a confession, every civilian wanted his head, and every cop wanted to put him behind bars for life. All this commotion while he wears a smile on his face. The city was relieved that he'd been caught, and the police was put on this high pedestal for what they've accomplished. It seemed like the moment he was caught, the city just forgot it was in a recession. Everything was going back to normal. Everyone was on their best behavior, partying the night away with this massive W. Now, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty with the criminal charges he gets for this part, but it's still fascinating, and I highly recommend you guys to watch Son of Sam: A Descent into Madness. If you have realized by now, I've been using some of their clips to explain things better than I can. So instead of covering this stuff, I'm going to be talking about Murray and how dead right he was, even though he may look like a lunatic doing this. Now, if you remember the transition read Sons of Sam, not Son of Sam. That was intentional. Due to Murray's obsessive investigation, he figured out that David was not alone in his shootings, but actually a part of a cult.
Fairly early after the arrest, Maury wondered. Now the police have arrested somebody, but the sketches don't add up. Oh, you know, eyewitnesses are frequently wrong a certain range.
From a dog named Sam, a dog that belonged to a neighbor, Sam Carr.
Murray's first thought was to investigate the cars. Looking to the phone booth, he finds a man named John Weedy Cars. Looking back on the sketches, Donna Joanne's shootings, they described John Carr's skinny, slim face instead of David's chubby, cheeked face. It was something simple that the police couldn't catch.
Wondering whether I should go, I looked back at the Son of Sam letter sent to Jimmy Breslin. A few days later, a friend gave me a photo of John Carr. Had missed.
When trying to get in contact with John Carr after 6 months of the Son of Sam arrest, Murray could never get an answer from John. When he noticed his car was parked at his house, he'd cruise around his house, catch John doing any housework or going to work, coming from work. But he got an unexpected call from his mother.
Looking for John Carr. He's dead.
It was ruled as a game man moment in Minecraft. It's questionable, right? Why would someone in the Carr family turn up dead in Minot, North Dakota? It raised even more questions. Unfortunately for Father Sam, both of his real sons will be found dead in quote-unquote accidents.
Michael Carr was driving a car on the West Side Highway in New York and was killed in a car accident that was questionable.
You don't accidentally run your car into a highline pole at 90-some miles an hour. I mean, I didn't see the whole picture.
Another shooting that Murray was suspicious about was Moskowitz and Valente's shooting. A witness has stated that she spotted David going out to his Ford Galaxy to get a parking ticket. The distance from his ticketed car to where the shootings took place are a couple of blocks away. Now this is where Tommy's testimony stands. He claimed that he saw an unknown assailant pull out a gun from beneath his shirt, slowly approach the car, then fire 4 times. With this witness testimony, Murray was able to map out a timeline to present his theory of there being multiple shooters. Crazy enough, David himself told Murray that he didn't shoot Carlo in the head, but claimed it was a female shooter from the cult.
Berkowitz agreed to go through each shooting, saying which ones he did and which ones he didn't, including Carl Denaro's.
Carl Denaro, Rosemary Keenan in Queens. No, that wasn't you. Were any of the 44 shootings done by females?
Yes.
Would that have been 1 shooting or 2?
1 I know of, possibly 2. But I know that Carl's was definitely a woman.
Berkowitz refused to name any living co-conspirators for fear of reprisals against his family.
With everything I've shown you and told you, you would think that the police will reopen their case and try to find this cult of Satan worshippers, right? Well, no. While Murray was getting deeper and deeper into this cult thing and trying to figure out who was who, putting names to faces, David sent him an unexpected letter. And what he left Murray in this letter was his raw fucking statement about the public opinion that may stay with me for the rest of my life.
I pulled out the first letter Berkowitz had ever written to me. Maury, the public will never ever truly believe you, no matter how well your evidence is presented. He had known it all along.
We're finally gonna talk about the puppet masters who've been pulling the strings and assisted in the Son of Sam shootings. Going all the way back to Michael Kerr, Murray wanted to dig into his past and find a link to why the Carr brothers were so spiritual. With a little bit of doing background checks, he turned up with Michael having an alcohol and drug addiction, which led him to seek guidance and help from none other than Scientology.
I learned that Michael had a number of drug and alcohol related issues, and first became active in the Church of Scientology to curb his addictions. Michael also had other spiritual endeavors, including an interest in the occult.
During his research, a name kept getting brought up, an organization which were created by ex-Scientologists Robert and Mary Ann D. Grimson for not believing the E-meter was being used properly. The group whom roots were still tied with Scientology with 1980 cult movement was the Process Church.
And they started something they called the Process.
It started as a psychotherapy technology, actually. More spiritual information started to emerge.
During their trip to Mexico, a hurricane appeared, trapping them there for 3 days, just getting pounded by 200-mile-per-hour winds and rain, uprooting villages. After witnessing this, they felt like it was a sign from God, telling them that the apocalypse will happen, and the whole world will be upside down with nothing of the old and tainted, and bring us up a new age of being. That was one of my all-time craziest sentences I've said in my lifetime. One thing that made them stand out was their affinity with only German Shepherds. This struck a chord for Murray. Those dogs that had been killed near Berkowitz, sacrificed by the groups in Yonkers, Untermeyer Park, and Minot were German Shepherds, only German Shepherds. They spread their influence around the United States, reaching California, where a certain individual got a hold of it and absorbed it.
And as things would have it, one of their neighbors at this time was Charles Manson.
This is where they lived, an old rundown movie location 20 miles from Los Angeles.
Now, I'm not going to get into all of Charles Manson's wrongdoings. You can find someone else on YouTube who did a great hit on him. I'm just going to talk about how he may have influenced the Son of Sam shootings and how he was involved with the process. Before Manson created a family, he would contribute to the death issues of the Process magazine.
Manson actually wrote a piece for you about death. He said, "Death is peace from this world's madness and paradise in my own self." Do you agree with that statement?
I think it's certainly his reality on what death is.
Manson stated in a letter he wrote that he and the leader, D. Grimston, had both went to the same party at Polanski's residence months before the murders. This was supported by Ed Sanders in his book about the Manson family. The rumors were prevalent enough that two members went to visit Manson in prison, according to the prison logs. In 1974, Process went into hiding before completely disbanding by two leaders separating, doing their own takes on the process. Mary D. Grimston took the good ending and turned her followers into an animal research refugee in Utah, while her ex-husband Robert took what was left of his followers and continued to practice the process in full until 1979, when he got bored of being a cult leader and wanted to be a businessman. Bro, truly living the American dream. Robert was secretly Patrick Bateman IRL. While he was still a leader, his own followers would make a cult from his teachings, calling themselves the Children.
The group we now know as the Children. Once the Son of Sam cult all for the Children.
From what I told you already about the shootings and the dog sacrifices, it was orchestrated by the Children. It was confirmed by the Son of Sam himself, David Berkowitz, as he'd been a member of the Satanic Cult in 1993. He even named two brothers, Michael and John Carr, as members of the cult, which brings the fact that he blamed the dog they had, which he claims was over 6,000 years old, by the way, was working through him in his shooting spree. One big claim Murray ran off with that was given to him by David was someone who was a part of the cult had the initials RR.
There was this moment we both looked at each other and went, Roy Raiden?
300-pound high-living playboy with a penchant for sex parties in his 72-room Long Island mansion.
Roy seemed to be a trendsetter because this part is actually crazy. So one of his rooms and his big ass mansion was half the size of a basketball court, and the entire room was a leather bed with a bunch of pillows scattered everywhere. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like someone we all know, most recently actually, must have took this man's idea and ran off with it, with an extra 1,000 baby oils stashed in his in his back pocket. You know, that's just something I'm just thought about, you know. And just like our future counterpart, according to the mother of the TV actress Melanie Haler, her daughter was R-worded and beaten when she refused to participate in an orgy. You fill in the blank. Bro, the more I read about this dude, the more I'm in shock how history truly repeats itself. Melanie was sadly beaten by 2 men and women, then R-word by Roy himself, which was then recorded to use as blackmail. Yeah, you already know what I'm talking about. You can already feel it. Murray believed that he finally was able to crack the case and he was gonna get the dirt on Roy and have him confess that he was in the children's cult, and the killing of Stacy Moskowitz was filmed for his sick enjoyment.
They said it was all about the Cotton Club.
In the end, it wasn't the snuff film that led to Rayden's demise, but greed and cocaine.
That snuff film was the golden ticket for Murray. Ward was later found unalive with a shotgun shot to the head in Apex. Even though Murray got this one wrong, he did get one more thing right, but he was unable to see this theory because he sadly would pass away on December 10th, 2015.
We have been faced with a challenge to back up our information and to go further. We accept that challenge.
Hi, Mr. Crawford. How are you?
Pretty good.
Can you open the door for us?
Sure, let me pull out the clothes.
Okay.
Real quick here.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, thank you. Are you about dressed?
Well, I have one leg in it. Just tell me that's what I like.
Mr. Gun. Mr. Crawford, put the gun away. Mr. Crawford, put the gun away. Patrol 1, shots fired on Camden Avenue.
Now to our other top story, the end to a decades-long cold case.
Arliss Perry was 19 years old at the time of her brutal death. Officials found her nude from the waist down in the back of the church. For years, the debate has raged over whether this killing was part of a satanic ritual.
The Santa Clara County Sheriff wrapped up a press briefing.
It comes with great honor to announce we solved the 43-year-old cold case. Stephen Blake Crawford, 72-year-old, was a security guard at Stanford University at the time of the murder. Crawford's been a person of interest since the beginning. We were able recently to link Crawford's DNA to the crime scene. Today, our detectives were serving a warrant, and when they knocked on the door of Crawford's residence, he killed himself.
During the search of the apartment, there were a couple of items of interest. One, there was a box in his closet with some important papers in it, and in it was a book called The Ultimate Evil, and it's a book about serial killers.
It is insane to me how that old bastard was able to live his life of 72 years getting away with what he did to Arliss Perry. Now, I did want to talk about this case because it was such a mess up murder and I couldn't describe it on YouTube. Now, if you recall that letter I was talking about when David gave to Murray his first letter with that one phrase I showed you, yeah, it's crazy how that also shows the ending to this. Like, this man, Murray, passed away not knowing that he was truly right and he had the facts right, but the media just didn't want to believe him, no matter how good it was. And that's crazy how he really predicted that. Now it's saying it can still be used for other things. Not other things, I'm kind of going crazy. That's why Murray Terry is the GOAT. Rest easy, King. You solved it, man. well, that's it for me. If you want to watch the doc, it's on Netflix. I definitely recommend it very much if you haven't watched it yet. Thank you all for making it this far. This may be the most I've ever typed and spoken to a mic, which I do need to do better and get a better mic too at that point. If you haven't already, like it if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe and hit the bell. It really do help this video going out to you guys and going out to like other new people as well. Everything I've used in this video will be in the description, and I'll catch you all later, assuming we both survive.